Hey everyone, it is time for another roundup. Strong sales of a not BS game actually seem to have EA confident in their single-player direction. Fallout 76 is just bloody hilarious sometimes. Stadia has managed to break, yet another one of its selling points, and of course, far more. Also, be sure to like, sub, and ring that bell. Trust me, it really does help with the channel, and with that, let's get into the news. Borderlands 3 is out on Stadia, and it ain't good. 2K Games have confirmed that the game actually will be running behind on Stadia, and they weren't kidding. The Stadia version is missing all updates since the 24th of October. Now, 2K say they're aiming for feature parity in early 2020, but that's not much use to people right now, especially since the Stadia version is without the game's answer to raids, and it's not going to get its first paid DLC on time. And then what's worse from the Stadia as a platform perspective is, well, it only runs at 30 FPS. So all that talk from Google of games being at 4K 60 running on their powerful servers, it's only true sometimes. And remember, Google sold pre-orders on that claim. And we found out that in many cases, if not most cases, it's just not the case. That's downright BS marketing. It's essentially lying. Now, Google, for their part, have said that, their stuff can do that and it's on their developers to actually make it work because, they're a platform. But ultimately, they were not clear about that before release, and they obviously did a lot of pre-sales based on that claim. So even if part of this is down to the Borderlands 3 team not getting it up to snuff in time, at the end of the day, it is a terrible look for Stadia, and it's yet another case where Stadia users are actually not really getting what was sold to them. Okay, next up, Fallout 76. Hackers have been out in force this past week as they, worked out how to do everything from adding NPCs to the airship from Fallout 4 into 76. So users on unknowncheats.me, they released a series of scripts that actually just allowed PC users to pretty much spawn in weapons and other items into the game. Now, 76 has always been easily messed with. Reportedly, right, this is mad, its anti-cheat was based on the names of processes on your computer, and that means you could basically rename, cheat engine to totally not cheat engine.exe, and it would actually get past the anti-cheat. Now then, apparently the game would just accept anything valid you threw at it in terms of items, meaning Fallout 4 items could be brought in. Why is that? Well, it's because most of the game is it's running on the client side, and really that's what makes it so darn hackable. Now, a workaround has since been issued, but the point still stands here. If you take a game like World of Warcraft, right, all the important stuff is going on server side. You can't just spawn in an item, the server will reject it. Well, in 76, so much is client side, and the client pretty much just tells the server what's up. So yeah, you could spawn in a weapon into the client, pick it up, and the server would just accept that you now have that weapon from the client. And I think the core here is Bethesda skimped out on the engineering side. They really did. I mean, imagine launching a pseudo MMO in an engine that is already super well known to modders without even doing a tiny fraction of the necessary work to keep that game safe. It is insane. That is Bethesda levels of incredible. Now, of course, this is likely down to, times and budgets, not affording the probably extremely good engineers at the company the time to do the job right. And I imagine that at the studio, a lot of staff are just looking at management and they're just saying, well, guess what? I told you so. Overall, I think it's just pretty darn typical of the way that Bethesda run things, and there's not much else to say, bar that, yeah, it was pretty darn funny. Then next up, Warcraft 3 Reforge finally has its release date. Now, to those of you who are not super caught up in this, the fact that its release date is going to be in January 2020 is a little bit suspicious because Blizzard actually sold pre-orders for that game last BlizzCon in 2018. They did that based on a summer 2019 release date, and of course it came with all the trimmings, your in-game items for World of Warcraft, that you'd get for your pre-order of the more expensive edition, all that jazz. Now, it's quite interesting because it seems like the development process here has been really darn shaky. Now, first off, right, when the beta came out, people started data mining it, and if you look at those models, what do you see? Well, they look like they're from Raid Shadow Legends, and you watch YouTube content, we all know what Raid Shadow Legends looks like. Very generic. So, that makes sense in the context of us pretty much knowing that those assets were farmed out to external teams. I believe it is mainly a studio in Malaysia who actually handled a very successful original StarCraft remaster. But if you actually look at those assets, they don't really look like they're in style with Warcraft 3. And we actually look at battle scenes in the multiplayer beta, I've got to admit, I think the readability is actually quite a bit down because so many things are just too darn high detail. And it's quite interesting. If you look how Blizzard moved from StarCraft to StarCraft 2, they were able to increase the detail but maintain readability. And seemingly by, farming out Warcraft 3, they might have actually lost that. Now, that doesn't account for all of this delay. There clearly have been development issues there. Now, last BlizzCon, they said they abandoned their initial plan to rework aspects of the game to put more of a focus, or just to add more content, I suppose, around Jaina and Sylvanas, characters who are more relevant in today's World of Warcraft. They actually scrapped those plans. Now, BlizzCon, they said, this is just because we want to do the most authentic experience, we listen to feedback, but ultimately, in the context of essentially a 4 to 6 month delay to the game, it does seem like whatever development hell was going on there, they just had to cut that stuff to actually hit some form of ship date. And certainly it's a little bit of an embarrassing situation for Blizzard, quite unfortunate, and I expect at some point we'll learn quite a bit more about the challenges that went into Warcraft 3 Reforged. Then next up, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order has delivered consistently strong sales performance since its release, with last week seeing a 30% increase in week-on-week sales. Now, the UK physical charts actually put it above titles like FIFA 20 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and just behind COD Modern Warfare, which is an insane achievement. Now, the sharp increase there, of course, that can be largely attributed to the new movie and that just increasing the IP awareness, though judging by reviews of the movie, seems like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order might be the only competent piece of Star Wars media released this year. Well, maybe save the television show, which I've not watched yet. Now, Fallen Order sales are, I think, important for a few reasons. The games industry has tended to look, at the live service multiplayer stuff as being the be-all, end-all of profit and player engagement and buzzwords and all that fun that people actually often don't really like that much. But Fallen Order's performance does show that a dedicated single-player experience aimed at core gamers that's doing the basics, putting them together good, and actually just doing it right, that is actually viable in today's market. And EA may have noticed because several job openings have appeared on their site. They offer the chance to create a, quote, incredible Star Wars experience with the team at Respawn Entertainment, and the listings actually specifically reference third-person action-adventure games. So, overall, what's up here? Well, EA have a bit of time left on their Star Wars deal, and with this game doing so well, I've got to wonder, will that deal be extended? Will they finally be actually delivering what Disney may have wanted them to be able to do? The other thing that I've been thinking about lately is with the movie pretty much tanking. I mean, with The Last Jedi just kind of messing up the franchise, and then the Skywalker one, the most recent one, seemingly just being a pretty bad movie in general, the good direction they're having there is Jon Favreau apparently coming in. Apparently the comics are quite good. Mandalorian's quite good. So I've got to wonder, will single-player narrative-focused video games actually have a future in that sort of transmedia and maybe less film-focused Star Wars? And I think if that is the case, we may start to get more interesting stories in that universe, can actually explore it a little bit more instead of just, doing a big rehash. And if so, I think that would be pretty decent. And then finally, it's yet more showing the market viability of good games. I mean, I think about this. I think about Sekiro. I mean, there are some similarities in terms of just elements of the game's design, the combat system and stuff like that. But, here you've got a Star Wars game. Yes, it's massively benefiting from the intellectual property that it's attached to, but the actual core game there is really darn good. It's done really darn well. It is selling really well. Same goes for Sekiro. And there's been a few other games like that. And even if you are to, ratchet down your budget to maybe the Control level, as we covered in yesterday's video, it did super well. Maybe if you ratchet our budgets down again to, say, Senua, which of course was a while ago, but there's more examples here of really good single-player games made for, I guess, core gamers, right, that are really, really good. And I've got to wonder if over time with success stories like this, like Sekiro, like those I mentioned, we're just going to see more, just the big companies opening up a bit more to that sort of game. I mean, Respawn are getting to do presumably another single-player Star Wars game to follow on this one. And if you take a look up north, right, up to Edmonton, up in Canada, where you've got BioWare, I've got to wonder, well, BioWare have been pushed in this live servicey direction with some of their games, presumably a little bit by EA. Well, I've got to wonder, with these games doing really well, will EA sort of let up that pressure on BioWare? And could that let us actually get some classic BioWare games, like what we all actually want from that studio? Hopefully, that is the case. And then next, let's get into the quickfire. So, Horizon Zero Dawn is releasing on PC. Kinda. It's hitting PS Now in January, and that means you can play it on PC if you've got a subscription. Now, a PC release of that game has been rumored for a while. We know nothing solid here. Last week, Jason Schreier said on Twitter that he refused to put the Horizon Zero Dawn PC rumors to bed. Now, it's unclear whether he meant the PS Now announcement that we've now got or the full release. I mean, Sony have been warming up seemingly to the idea of cross-platform. Death Stranding actually runs in the same engine as Horizon, and it will hit PC in summer 2020. And the first-party developed/published title, MLB The Show, that's going to release on all platforms in 2021. So, hey, maybe there's some hope from Bloodborne. I would love to play that game with acceptable frame timings, and certainly Sony could make a lot of money if they just put some of their back catalog onto PC. Then next up, we've got big VR sales. In the wake of Half-Life Alyx, the Valve Index sales have been going from strength to strength, so much so that now it's actually backordered to February 2020. Now, Valve have commented here saying that sales have actually outpaced their own expectations, and well, at this rate, new units are going to be shipping just in time for Alyx's March release. Now, Alyx just seems to be selling VR units across the board because sales of the Oculus Quest have also been surging. So I've really got to wonder, could this be the biggest holiday period for VR yet? I mean, PSVR's lower entry point, that made sense, but seeing such a surge in premium, like really expensive PC VR, well, that certainly is interesting. Then next up, we learned a few things about the new Xbox this week, and some of them could be good for PC gamers. So we learned that the next-gen console is simply called Xbox, and the Series X is just the first model of that we actually know about. We also learned that the Series X is, well, it's enormous. I mean, according to the mock-ups, like, if the consoles were set vertically, then the Series X is actually twice as wide as the original Xbox One and just a little bit shorter. Why? Well, I'd say it's likely to allow for better thermals, which will mean better performance. Maybe there could be some upgradability there in how they've designed it, and, past that, it could be like one form factor that will lend itself to generational upgrades, like, on maybe a yearly basis or something like that from Microsoft. And, given how they like Windows again, it could make sense to just constantly be pushing the bar more on the console side because, well, that would be additive for their entire business now that it's across so many different platforms. I mean, imagine if in like 3 years, right, you've got your $250, $300 Xbox Series X, maybe you've got a $500 one, maybe there's a $700 one that has, more high-end PC-like performance. Something like that could be interesting, and as PC gamers, it's actually good for us because it would mean that that sort of bottom end of performance, that would always be, well, being bumped up. So there could be some positives there in the direction of the next gen. Then we're also seeing interesting stuff from Epic. So the Epic Store has been out for a year, and that actually means that its first batch of timed exclusives, so that's Ashen, Hades, and Hello Neighbor Hide and Seek, well, they've actually just hit Steam. That's now happening. And for all the jokes that can be made about the Epic Games Store, I mean, its existence actually seems to have been good for Steam from a consumer perspective in a few ways. I mean, Valve sat quietly atop their little monopoly before the Epic Store appeared, but since then, we've had Steam have library changes, a discoverability and recommendations rework, there's a new Half-Life game, they're just adding loads of features. There's also Play Together, that's another great feature they've made for players and developers. So it seems like at the very least, Epic's incessant meddling in the industry has, well, actually forced Valve to make some good announcements, some good updates for Steam. So, hey, I guess that's something for us. Then next, we've got the No More Heroes 3 plagiarism drama. So now that it's actually happened, it's just so simple, right? The studio used an asset from a third-party store. It turned out that the seller of that asset on the store had plagiarized. So seemingly, it's quite an honest mistake. And I've got to imagine that amends will be pretty darn easy to make here, because I'd say just about everyone knows, well, really, what happened, and that there's probably no ill will. And then finally, last week, Capcom announced that the Resident Evil 2 remake has officially surpassed the original's lifetime sales. So the remake has just topped 5 mil sales, while the 1998 game, the original, is at 4.96 million, which is pretty darn insane. And as an aside here, RE7 sold 6.8 million, RE6 7.4, RE5 was somewhere under 7.5 million. I've got to wonder how much the Resident Evil 3 remake will actually pull in when it comes out next year. And overall, it's kind of interesting here because outside of their fighting game division, Capcom have been just knocking it out of the park lately, seemingly just having really good quality content that people actually want to play. And I mean, with Iceborne, with with the Resident Evil stuff, they're non-BS games, right? And that really is a nice thing to say. And what do I mean when I say non-BS games? I just mean there's none of the modern AAA tiresome BS that I'm just constantly railing against on this channel. And it certainly is heartening. So there you go. That is it for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, sub, leave a few comments below. Let me know what you think about the stories we talked about. And with that, I will see you next time.